In this video, we will take a look at the Rollup Bar, which, as you can see, it's positioned on the right side of the interface inside the editor. It's really a really important part of the interface because inside of the Rollup Bar there are all the tools that you need for creating objects and entities inside CryEngine 3. So I'll focus in this video more on the tools that I used for the organic environment in this level. I'm not gonna show tools that are focused on the AI or specific game design entities. I'm just gonna show you everything that you need to create something like that. So let's get started. As you can see, the Rollup Bar is consisting of 5 main tabs, and the first tab, the objects. It starts with again the AI tab that we don't really need. Inside, basically, there are tools that the level designers and game designers use to set up navigation paths for the enemies and create specific trigger zones that will trigger certain kind of behavior from the enemies inside the game. Yeah, but for now we don't really need it at this point. The area tab inside, you can find pretty interesting tools. Let's start with the area box and area sphere. The only difference actually is the shape of the entities. As a function, they do the same thing. As you can see, if you click on the icon on the area box, it will create this blue rectangle shape inside the level, and if you just left click, you place it in the level, and basically on the right side in the Rollup Bar you can increase the shape, and you can increase the size of the entity, you can make it a lot higher, stuff like that. So the main function of the area box and area spheres are that you can set them up to trigger certain effects. For example, you can link wind or rain particle effects to this zone, so when the player enters the zone, this certain particle effect will start playing, or you can trigger some other events, for example falling debris, stuff like that. It's really useful. It helps creating a lot of different and interesting scenarios in the games. Let me just get rid of that. Occluder plane. Now this is really interesting. If you click anywhere on the ground with the mouse and just drag, you'll see that it creates this pink plane that's oriented vertically. And now you can see that from here you can adjust the height, you can make it really high. And the main function of the occluder plane is that basically it stops any object that it's positioned behind it from rendering. And that really helps when you have to optimize and make sure that your level runs really fine. And if you have any type of corridors or level or cave sections like I have for this level, it's really useful to place at certain points these occluder planes. It's really good idea to mask them and place them around corners and with some big props like a rock in front of them, so the player can't really see all these objects disappearing, because as you can see now, all the objects here in the cave disappeared behind the plane, but if I go beyond the plane, they appear again. Now you can make this plane double-sided. So if I go from the other side and look again, as you can see, for example, this door now that was supposed to be here, it's gone now. It stops rendering, and that can, with good use of these occluder planes and shapes, you can really optimize your level to run really well with high frames per second. Let me just get rid of this entity and continue. Now the shape. I'm just gonna switch on the exterior of the level to show you what I For example, what you can do with the shape. So first you click on shape and just make sure that this button here on the top, follow terrain, is clicked on, and then just start clicking on the ground. You see these lines forming a rectangle shape. Just double click with the left mouse button when you're ready. And from there, all you need is to scroll down and click this button reset height. That will even all the points of this shape. From there, if you go to the shape parameters, you can increase the height. And now, for example, let's say that you want to add really strong wind in this part of the level. All you need to do is, after creating this shape, to scroll up again in the Objects tab, and from Entity, go into the Physics, scroll a little bit, and under Physics you can find this Wind entity. Just click, drag, and click again inside the box. Now, this entity by itself won't do anything. You have to link it to the area, and the way to do that is, again, click on the shape to select it, scroll a little bit, and here you can see this window target. Now, all you need to do is click the pick button and select your wind entity. Now you see this blue line appears, that it shows that the two entities are linked together, and from there it's really easy. All you need to do is, I'm gonna put some really high values just for example. So from here you can increase the wind velocity. I'm gonna put something like 50 by 50, and the change won't be instant. The particle effects in CryEngine need a few seconds to kick in. So you see that now all the trees in the grass is really moving crazy, because the wind is like 100 times stronger than it's supposed to be. So again, you can very easily type lower values. Just wait like 10 seconds or so, and you'll see how the wind will get a lot less intensity. Yeah, so it's a really useful entity, and you can link it not only with wind. You can link it with rain, with tornadoes, all kinds of interesting atmospheric effects. Let me just get back again in the interior. Now here, the water volume, it's a really good one if you want to create some kind of water shape inside your level, but you don't want it to be the ocean. For example, if you want to make some lake like this one, I'm just gonna show you. First, I need to delete this one. Now, go and click on water volume. Make sure again that this button follow terrain is ticked on. Sorry. And now all you need is to start clicking on the ground. Sorry, I just need to. Sometimes you can't really interact with these objects until, and this is I think a bug inside CryEngine. The only way to fix it is just to go to the brush entity and find some object, place it in the level, and just quickly delete it, and now you're gonna be able to again interact with these shapes. So now if you start clicking, you see these lines that start creating. Just continue to click until you're satisfied with the shape of the volume, and at the end just double click, and you can additionally scale the entity with the scale button. That really helps if you want to hide the borders of the mesh. You don't need the player to see that the water is just cut in weird shapes. So when you created your water area, all you need to do is go down here, and like in the area entity with the wind before, you just have to click reset height. And from there it's basically a matter of assigning a water material. Just scroll under the water volume options, and here the MTL button, right now it's empty because there is no material added to the water volume. So you need to click on the water material, go into the materials tab here, and from there you just search for the water tab. Under the water volumes you can find some predetermined some presets and plates for water materials. I created a few for this level, so I'm just gonna click on one of them and then just press assign item to selected objects. Now as you can see, the water looks weird, but that can very easily be fixed by just adjusting the fog cover volume, something less saturated and not so bright. And yeah, you can just play around with these settings and create some really nice looking water shapes and lakes and pools, for example, in your level. So let's continue. Now with the area, I think we took a look at the most important stuff. The designer tab, there's nothing really that we need right now. The game custom, again, nothing really important. Under the MISC, you can find the camera entity, which is really cool if you want to set the camera for a cutscene or just for taking high-res screenshots from your level. All you need to do is just click on the camera and place it in the level. And now from here you can adjust the field of view. Oh. And the way to look through this camera, it's by going here on the perspective button, right click, and on the camera tab just click on camera 1. And as you can see, now you see through the camera entity, and you cannot really move it now, but you can change its position and rotation from these options here. To get back to the default perspective view, just click again here and click on default camera. So now in MISC, the other really interesting entity that you need, especially if you create interior sections like caves, it's the environment probe. Now I already placed an environment probe here, and its main function is that it creates image from the surroundings around the probe, and it uses it to apply indirect illumination effects on all the objects that are inside its radius. As you can see here under the environment probe properties, you can increase the radius, make it really large, and you can assign a custom color if you want to tint this part of the level in something different. You can always click on the color picker and choose something like this, and under the diffuse multiplier, usually it's a good idea to keep it under 0.2, but for now I'm just gonna set to 0.5. Don't go overboard with the specular multiplier, because by default it's at 1, and if it remains at this after you bake the cube map, all the objects will look very glossy and very unrealistic. Just the best value is something around 0.1 or 0.2. So when you're ready with the setup of the color and the values for the diffuse and the specular and the HDR, all you need to do is just click this button, generate cube map. You see all the affected area in pink color, and then everything it's baked as an indirect illumination on the objects. For example, if I go now here on the active button and turn this probe off, you can see that this effect disappears. It's a really useful tool for creating different ambiances and lighting effects inside your level, especially in the interior parts. So let's continue under the misc. Yeah, nothing really that it's that important. Here you can create rivers, ropes. Ropes are physically based objects in CryEngine. Example for rope you can see inside the forest level. Now on the prefab, I already explained the prefabs are type of groups, but each instance of the prefab it's dependent of the other. If you change something in one prefab, it will automatically update all the other prefabs. Right now, it doesn't really need that. On the sound, you can place ambient volumes and sound effects. Now, the brush. This is the most important for me option inside the object tab. Under brush, you find every object that you created for your level. Later, when we start making our own props, I'm going to show you how exactly to set up the export. But yes, when you go to brush, you can see that in the object folder there are all the objects that are placed inside this level. You can see, and the way to put objects in the level is just to click on the desired object and just drag and drop it inside the level and click again to position it. Yeah, as you can see now, I placed one of the torch props inside the level, and yeah, it's really strange that the CryEngine uses this name for the 3D models, but you'll see that it's very easy to work that way with it. As you can see again here, you can see all the props that I placed, and the reason that some of them are red and they're missing with the materials is something that I'm going to show you in the later lessons when we start creating the rock prop. But yeah, again, you click on one vegetation object, just place it here, and you can see that you can very easily, after you placed your object in level, you can very easily scale, rotate, and move. That's all things that we showed previously in the level. Now, the next step, it's really important when you start creating your new level and you have to make your own terrain. Let me just skip to the one of the exterior parts of the level. So, under the terrain tab, the most important tab is the modify. Here you can see that when you click on modify, this green elliptical tool appears that is following the terrain, and basically that means that you can sculpt your terrain using all these tools here. For example, if you want to make a little hill here, all you need to do is first set up the height, something like 1 or 2. Then you can increase the outside radius, and when you increase the outside radius, you'll see that there are two radiuses inside this tool, and that means that the bigger distance between the two of them means the bigger fall off and the more smooth shapes that you will create. For example, now if I just click, you can see that you can just start sculpting your terrain. If I decrease the inside radius, you can see that you have even more fall off in the movement. And the hardness controls basically how intensive will be the terrain modifying. For example, if you need a much more subtle sculpting of the terrain, you need something like 0.1. You can always decrease the height, say to 1. And that way you can very easily, using just different radiuses, sculpt some hills or mountains. If you want to sculpt some holes in the terrain, all you need to do is just place a negative value here. For example, -1. And then when you paint, you'll see that it actually starts to make these lower parts in the terrain. Now, if you sculpted your terrain and you have like these rough edges here, you can easily remove them by just clicking on the smooth tool. And as you can see, it will smooth out any rough shapes in your terrain. And I recommend using this tool especially on the parts where the player can walk on, because the collision for the terrain follows pretty much the visual. So if you sculpt very harsh portions of the terrain, the player won't be able to actually walk on them. So yeah, it's a basically good idea to make the playable areas a bit more smoothed out.